Well, thank you everyone for coming here. My last days as a free person. I have to say I'm disappointed in my government. I'm a little disappointed in my country, but I remain a very positive and proud Canadian patriot. I'm proud of everything I've done. I won't be repentant. I won't be apologizing to any judge. I'll only regret that I wasn't able to do more. Well, we'll be going into the courtroom now. It's probably the last time I'll be giving you a press conference for a while. We love you, Mark. This is a witch hunt.
Devastated, but I'm furious. Our Canadian government is abandoning Canadians abroad and sending Canadian citizens like my husband to a foreign country to be punished under severe laws. I've been crying endlessly, but now I'm angry. And everybody should be angry. I'll bring my husband back home to me, please.
Thank you, Mark. We love you. Free Marc Emery! 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 Free Marc Emery!
Civil disobedience is the active refusal to obey certain laws and commands of a government. It is nonviolent resistance to authority in order to effect social change. Some of the greatest political leaders of modern times have used it with great success. Gandhi used it in his campaign for independence from the British Empire. Mandela in South Africa in the fight against apartheid, and Martin Luther King during the American Civil Rights Movement. Marc Emery also uses it.
Go, Canucks, go.
I will never, ever give up until this city is freed first and this nation second from the terrible shackles of marijuana prohibition. I will never rest, and I will succeed with your help.
I am dedicated enough to be willing to go to jail.
Well, Martin Luther King is only an inspiration, but I like to think that we're running parallel lives. So did you take the topless girl some joints? Always reward all semi-naked women.
Okay, guys, we're having to close the lane off. We just have to get you to go down to the street, okay?
In July of 2005, Marc Emery and two of his associates, Michelle Rainey and Greg Williams, seen here, were arrested by Canadian authorities acting at the behest of the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. The three were arrested for selling marijuana seeds from Canada to Americans over the internet.
Marc Emery's overwhelming arrogance and abuse of the rule of law will no longer be on display or tolerated.
Marc Emery had been arrested many times before. But at worst, he'd served 3 months in a Canadian jail.
And you can do these things too. I was just one person telling thousands and thousands of other people, and that's what you can do.
Marc Emery is one of the most influential forces in the modern marijuana legalization movement. From his base in Vancouver, Canada, he has defied the United States in their war on drugs.
900,000 people in America are in jail because of the drug war.
He made millions selling marijuana seeds from Canada to Americans over the internet. And then he put his profits back into the marijuana legalization movement.
I figured if I sold all these seeds, all these people, they would grow tons of pot, and sure enough they did. We're all gonna overgrow the government.
Emery wreaked havoc in Canada while most of his profits went back to the US to fund legalization efforts in places like Washington State and Colorado, where pot was legalized in 2012. After Emery's arrest, the DA punned that legalization lobbyists now had one less pot of money to rely on.
I've got 22 convictions for marijuana. I've been arrested 17 times, jailed 13 times, raided 5 times, and I still think this is the greatest nation on earth.
On September 21st, 2009, Emery appeared to be losing a fight against extradition to the United States that would determine not only his destiny, but potentially the destiny of the marijuana movement itself.
To me, my whole life has been built around this moment in time where I'm going to make marijuana legal and free all these people. And that's what I'm looking for, something where people, might have a picture of me on the wall in 30, 40 years and be able to look at that picture and it inspires them every day to want to pursue a noble goal. People often ask me, well, why marijuana legalization? Why not world hunger, or why not homelessness or poverty? Because the marijuana people are the chosen people. We are the world's best people. We are the most godly people. If we substitute the word pothead for Jew.
Jew, you can't work here. Jew, we're going to take your home.
And that's why I call our struggle a holy struggle.
Does fear affect you at all?
No.
Just quickly.
I'm having a lot of fun. I'll explain this. All my life I grew up with influences like Spider-Man, where the misunderstood hero takes on the whole world as well as fights bad guys, right? Individuals pitted up against the monolith of the system. See, so ultimately I have achieved what I have always sought to attain, is that I am now fighting the Goliath. I haven't got the international stage. Hey, I was never on 60 Minutes before they tried to extradite me. And it was like the DEA validating my own claim to importance. By the end of the night, you'll be convinced that I've brought more to this country, more to this province, perhaps more to this world, than almost anybody else alive. I saw it on Lou Dobbs, on CNN, right there, where Prime Minister Harper and George Bush are meeting, and then what are they talking about? Allegedly me.
Reckless, heedless. There is something really pushy and obnoxious about the guy that just rubs people the wrong way. And I think no small part of that is propelled by an ego that's got to be responsible for 40% of his body weight.
Well, I always told people I was the leader of this movement. I always said I represented it. I always said that my vision was the vision we should pursue.
Emery's political vision, his willingness to die for a cause, was born not of a passion for protest, but for money.
By the time I was 7 years old, I was curious about how do I get more money. So I went to my father. I said, well, Dad, how do I get more money if I can't ask you? And he says, well, you have to go and get a job like I do. And he was joking, actually, he later told me. But what happens is I go throughout the whole neighborhood and I ask all the neighbors if they have any jobs for me to do so I can earn money.
But he was enterprising. He was always enterprising. He sent away to the newspapers like Uncle Milty's Fun Circus,
So what I do is I charge my friends 5 cents for 5 shots of the rifle, and I charge them 5 cents to use my race car set for 10 minutes.
He gets this big cardboard box and he fills it up with all kinds of goofy toys and stuff. He would move his hand like this, and you'd, okay, keep moving, keep going that way, and then down, down, down. And he'd grab something up, or maybe not.
My next business, I start to get interested in stamps. I'm going to the YMCA, and a man named Stan Shans is giving out stamps for free. And I would tend to trade the worthless ones to other kids for their valuable stamps. And slowly but surely a transfer of wealth was happening, because I would give them really colorful, beautiful stamps that had no real value for their ones that looked dull and old and not particularly interesting looking, but had a much higher financial value. By the time I was 11, I developed Marc's Comic Room. I put out my own little typewritten catalog and announced my own retail prices for them.
It was so interesting to watch capitalism, raw capitalism, work at its birth in the driveway.
I start making hundreds and hundreds of dollars a week. I boast to my father, I said, Dad, how much money do you make at your factory? Did you make this week? And he says, after taxes, I made $402. And I said, I beat you. I made $440 this week, and I'm only 14 years old. He said, when I was your age, I had to help support my family. And so I'm gonna charge you $40 a week, room and board, while you're here. And I'm going, $40 a week? And that's when I learned another important lesson. Sometimes you should just shut up. So when I got back to my school, and I was sitting in a desk, I was thinking, no, I've grown beyond this. I don't even feel like I belong here. I quit school with the clear intent of opening a bookshop up downtown and taking over one from a guy who didn't want to run one anymore for $10,000. I didn't really have $10,000, but I sold my comic book business to someone right away, got $6,000. And then my father, who didn't have any money to lend me, he borrowed $4,000 on our life insurance policies, lent that to me, and I used that to buy this business, in which I turned into City Lights Bookshop. It was just a nice living, and I ended up meeting a lot of nice people and a lot of great books, and I really educated myself working in that environment. But on April 15th, 1975, at age 17, I was the proprietor of City Lights Bookshop, and I was so successful that I paid my father back his $4,000 within about 3 or 4 months. I'm selling a lot, I'm very successful. The newspaper, within 6 months, the London Free Press does a huge article, and it's called High School Dropout Leaves School, Finds Success in Book Business. So already the public's being told I'm a success, I feel successful, I've had sex now, women are interested in me. So of course, this is a perfect environment for me to get really cocky, really arrogant, and really full of myself.
Emery's success with business was to be an experience that defined him for a lifetime. As was foretold, Emery would have it, in a prophecy.
I'm working away in my City Lights bookshop, and on a Saturday in 1977, books are stacked up everywhere. I'm very caught up in my work. The music's on, so I don't hear things going on outside. I'm working away in the back of my store. It's a very long store. And a friend of mine comes in and says, Mark, a woman just collapsed literally outside of your door, cracked her head on the sidewalk, and fortunately, one of your neighbors came by, called an ambulance, and took her away. He said, did you see that? And I go, what? This happened right outside? He said, yeah, right out there. He said, they've even just been washing the blood off the sidewalk now. 3.5 weeks later, on a Monday morning actually, I get a call just as my store is opening. It's all quiet in there and there's no one else to bother me, and the phone rings and I pick it up and I go, hello, City Lights Bookshop, and this older woman's voice, fragile, says, Marc Emery? And I go, yes. And she said, Marc Emery, you don't know me, but a terrible, terrible thing has happened to me, and I need to tell you about it because I am haunted by what's happened, and I feel if I tell you now, even though we've never met, this will stop bothering me. And I'm going, well, what are you talking about? And she said, 3.5 weeks ago on a Saturday, I was walking right in front of your store, and she said, and in the space of a fraction of a second, everything about you was being forced into my brain, and within that second, I hit the ground and fell unconscious, she said. And I've been in a coma for most of 3 weeks, and I was only released yesterday from Victoria General Hospital. And she said, all the time I was in hospital, all I can think about was you. She said, all I saw was your life in great detail, Mr. Emery, but the most important things I saw I want to tell you about and see if they mean anything to you. I was constantly aware that there are 3 symbols that are going to guide your life, your future. And she said, and you have a great, a momentous future, but it's going to be challenging and difficult. And she said, and the first sign that will be dominant in your life is the sign of the dollar. And then she said, and the second symbol I see that comes up all the time is your mind. I see your mind like a steel trap. And the third symbol, she says, is the most mysterious to me. She said, because it's a leaf. It's just a simple leaf.
The first symbol the woman saw was the dollar sign, and just how defining money would be in Emery's life was also foretold in the vision.
And Mr. Emery, it's more than just money. She says, you will be good with money. And I thought at that age, 19, I had my own business, I was good with money, but she said, you're gonna be good with money, but it's more important than that. It's a philosophical statement. The sign of the dollar means much more than just about money. It means you're going to rule this symbol, that you're going to use this symbol as a way to advance a movement forward.
In the late 1980s, Marc Emery began working for Canada's left-wing New Democratic Party, but his political heart, as he soon found out, lay elsewhere.
The candidate in London East where I was campaigning was a professor of history at the University of Western Ontario named Rob Martin.
I first met Marc Emery in 1979 when there was a federal election going on.
We need tough leadership to grow. A leader must be a leader. Support Prime Minister Trudeau.
And I was the candidate for the NDP in London East, and Marc Emery, strange as it may seem today, worked on my election campaign. The interesting thing was that while Marc Emery worked on my campaign in the federal election of 1979 and the federal election of 1980, Marc Emery was an opposing candidate. I ran again in London East for the NDP, and Marc was the candidate in London East for the Freedom Party, or perhaps it was the Libertarian Party. It's hard to keep the name changes separate.
A nice enough fellow, and in 1979 I remember going to all his candidates' meetings and clapping on cue for him, and there were 3 fellows there, and they represented this new party I'd never heard of called the Libertarian Party. And they had no supporters there, and they had nobody to cheer them on. But every time I listened to them, they made eerie sense to me. And of course, it was eerie because on one hand, I was embracing the New Democratic Party politics of the left, and yet these people whom were disparaged by other people in the audience and other candidates being real right-wing had such plain truths in their comments that I couldn't help but agree with them. They said, you know, if you're a business person, you can't do anything right in this society. If you charge too much, you're price gouging. And if you charge too little, you're price dumping. And if you charge the same as your competitor, you're price fixing. He said, if you're in business, you simply can't win in a government today. And I thought, well, that's really true. I have heard those accusations. They think because I agree with them so much, it's peculiar that I'm with the NDP. Richard said, you have some hope in you, so I'm going to give you this book, and I hope you'll read this book, and if you do read it, maybe you'll call us up. So months go by, and I finally one day sit in the backyard without anything to read, so I pick up this book, and it's called Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal by Ayn Rand. And I am thunderstruck from the opening paragraphs, the man's rights, the nature of individual rights, and the nature of government. Those 3 chapters changed my entire way of thinking for the rest of my life and become basically the inspiration for everything that follows for 30 years. Later on, I would read Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand, and the symbol of the dollar is above the mythical community of outcasts and rebels that I eventually become one as an acolyte of Ayn Rand, and the symbol of the dollar is above Galt's Gulch. So I became convinced that government was the sole and utter evil in our society, and that business was good, that humans were good, that individuals were good, and that although occasionally one or two might be evil, they didn't pose a threat to mankind like the monolithic evil that a state could provide. When we look at my other heroes, you know, like Spider-Man and Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead, the next novel I read after Atlas Shrugged. Well, he's this really iconoclastic individual, defying all the conventions of society. And of course, the book portrays him as being absolutely correct, too.
But unwilling to compromise his ideals at any price, Dominique Francon, the kind of woman who could enslave any man except one.
And he was an architect, a creator, you know, very articulate. So I saw myself in that book, and I saw myself in that same kind of defying the worldview out there, this collectivist mentality, this statist mentality.
The man who refuses to submit and to serve. Howard Rourke is the man who must be destroyed.
Now it's very difficult in the real world to imagine one person against the whole world.
He's not any better than the rest of us.
What if he is?
But I really enjoyed that kind of paradigm, because I saw myself there, of course, right? And now I had become convinced of all of Ayn Rand's ideas, and this character was the embodiment of these ideas.
Every horror and destruction came from attempts to force men into a herd of brainless, soulless robots.
And Ayn Rand, as I said, is the kind of politics that appeals very much to the adolescent mind. It's unencumbered by subtlety or contradiction, which is what the real world is about. But the Ayn Rand view of the world is pure and uncluttered by any sort of considerations like that. And that's Marc Emery's view of the world, a purely ideological notion about the world.
After the 1979 election, by the time 1980 rolls around, not only have I run for the leadership of the Libertarian Party, you know, within a week of joining it, but I eventually organized the candidacies of 12 candidates in the Southwestern Ontario region, including myself. So it's my first early experience into political activity, and that's all inspired by these Ayn Rand books I'm reading.
With this new libertarian fire in his belly, Emery spent most of the 80s fighting virtually every anti-government cause he could think of. One of his earliest campaigns was against a minor business improvement tax. Rather than pay the $32 fine, he spent $20,000 in 3 years on the campaign to scrap the tax.
My first lesson was that it's just incredibly time-consuming, very hard, very frustrating, and very expensive to oppose the system. Amazingly, it didn't deter me. I don't know why, but it didn't. It just set me on a career of troublemaking like that.
By 1984, Emery had run twice for the Libertarian Party and lost. Wanting more control, he started the Freedom Party with a local London accountant named Robert Metz.
I decided that what Canada needed, and I was incorrect in retrospect, but what they needed was a political party dedicated to individual rights, which I didn't believe they had an effective one. And I again would spend the next 5 years of my life and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, $50,000 to $100,000 minimum on establishing a political party.
Marc was we called him our action director, which meant he basically instigated and began certain campaigns for the party.
In the late 1980s, Emery started researching the history of individual freedom for a wall calendar fundraising project. It was intended to highlight the bright days and the dark days in that history. According to Emery, the darkest days included the day universal free health care was adopted in Canada. The brightest days included the day of the Boston Tea Party, the famed tax revolt. The calendar may have led Emery to a new approach to political change.
Marc decides law-breaking is the way that many issues have been brought to the fore, and you then, after you've broken the law, you go to court and you challenge it under the Constitution, and then the court finds in your favor and you're the hero.
This was a guy who didn't just break the law, he flouted the law, and every chance he got.
His new approach, civil disobedience, would need a new cause, and he found it in Sunday shopping.
The Freedom Party's stand in favor of Sunday shopping tends to be unpopular with many.
Hello, here's a brochure supporting your right to shop on Sunday.
No, I don't like it at all. It's bad.
Well, what are you buying things for?
A law, known as the Lord's Day Act, made it illegal to shop on Sundays in Ontario.
I am going to open this Sunday, and I have every intention of getting charged, and by no means whatsoever will I pay the fine I'm going to get. I intend to go to jail.
London's best-known thorn in the side of the system is at it again.
We were charged 8 times for breaking the Sunday shopping law, and each time we did differently. I broke that law every way. One day, I gave books away free before Christmas. That was so absurd. That immediately got people's sympathy. But we did it because we knew that even that was illegal. You couldn't even be Santa Claus on the day before Christmas.
And we had a big sign saying Lawbreaker Special, which featured a 20% savings on Sundays, an additional 5% off if you just got out of church. I couldn't help that deal. And an additional 25% if you happen to be a police officer. And remarkably, that little 25% for police officers, the officers who did eventually come by asked if they could get it when they got off duty later on that day.
He's probably, I think, still the only person in Ontario to ever have gone to jail for a Sunday shopping charge.
I regard going to jail as being a very pivotal time in my life, too, because, it hardens you. It makes you realize the consequences of when you exercise your freedom. You see, if you want to be a free man in Canada, you would spend most of your time in jail.
Emery was sentenced to 3 days in the local jail.
And the Crown in later charges decided that they would just not want to pursue this because it would only fuel all the publicity that I was beginning to get across the country, because I was beginning to show up on CBC television. We're beginning to zero in on me as the advocate of Sunday shopping. And like all issues, I feel I was doing a better job advocating the legitimacy of opening up on Sunday than anybody else. We have been made enemies of the very people we pay taxes to keep afloat. And it's time we turned around and told them, fuck you.
Emery won. Sunday shopping came to Ontario.
And by going to court on Sunday shopping, people were able to galvanize and say, here's a lone man doing something moral and proper he believes in, he's willing to go to jail, and it's hard to dislike someone who does that.
After the ground war that was Sunday shopping, Emery opened up a second front in his war on government by taking to the air on a local radio station.
And good afternoon, London, Ontario. This is Radio Desert Storm, and we're welcoming all you air jockeys out there and you B-52 space cowboys who patrol the airways, protecting us from them mean, miserable Iraqis. It's kill for peace, and that's what we want, don't we? More of that. So what happened when they gave me a show, I was a nice guy. And as I learned more about the power of the media, I decided that we were going to really make a statement on this show.
But here at Radio Desert Storm, we're a free democratic radio station. We got an open mind here, and if you don't open it, we'll bomb the hell out of you and kill you.
The album, As Nasty as They Wanna Be, by Two Live Crew, was the only record ever banned in Canada. Emery began to play it on his show. He also made it known he would be selling the record at his City Lights books, which sold just the one record.
Any record store that was previously handling this tape, and there were 4 or 5, have had visits by the police. Consequently, all 4 record stores that did handle it withdrew it from sale, and I find that's police intimidation, and that's unacceptable in a free society.
One of the buyers was a police officer. Emery was charged and sentenced to 12 months probation. Back at the radio station, Emery was in trouble, and not just because of Two Live Crew.
We had made it quite clear that the use of profanities on the air, name-calling of members living in the community would get us into serious trouble, either a lawsuit or having our license revoked. And his pat answer was, well, I will pay for a lawyer.
Call us at 661-3600 if you're offended. I'm in the mood for an argument, so give us a call.
Allowing Marc Emery on the radio station is like putting a drunk driver behind the wheel of an automobile.
He once again shocked people to the degree that he lost that opportunity.
Being fired from radio is the only honorable way to go. I mean, especially when you get fired for saying what you believe is true. Ultimately, I'm a publicity seeker because unlike most Canadians, I think I have something to say. I actually think that I can say it properly and with a degree of context that makes me understood above the rabble of totally inarticulate nabobs that are going around spouting these stupid ideas that permeate our society.
This was not the first time Emery complained about Canada or Canadians. In fact, Canada was increasingly a focus of Emery's attacks. On the editorial pages of the London Free Press, he attacked the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, public health care, and even the way Canadians sang their anthem.
The Canadians' commitment to values is just shoddy, and that shows up in their inability to sing with any enthusiasm the national anthem. They don't believe that there's anything to celebrate here except confusion and chaos.
Then, one spring night in 1992, Emery decided he'd had enough of Canada.
It's very difficult to afford to raise a family in Canada. I mean, I'm not a great businessman. I made enough to live on, and then I would spend the rest on these noble causes, of which I can no longer afford to do. And I'm sure a lot of Canadians are out there saying, well, good riddance to you. But they have to think, is this the kind of person they want to lose? Because who's staying behind in this country? And I very much would love to one day come back to a free society or help to create a free society when I'm convinced Canadians want one. But until then, I have to be in exile because I believe it's hypocritical to continue to be here at this point in time when I feel that this country is my enemy.
I was a bit in a snit because I felt people weren't grateful for all the activities I'd done. But it wasn't happening fast enough to make me content. And so I decided, oh, Canada's not worth it. They're ungrateful. I should leave and deprive them of my great talent that I'm giving them.
I think if I go to another country like India or Thailand, I think I'll get more respect there for who I am than I do from my own country people.
But India made no particular fuss about Marc Emery. Nor did Malaysia, where he and his family went to next.
And I built this beautiful house on the side of this volcano crater lake in Indonesia, in the island of Sumatra. Used all my money there. Eventually, I build it. It takes me 4 months and a work crew of 20 and takes all my money, and I never end up spending a day there.
The family who owned the land called the police and had Emery kicked off the day the house was finished. Stunned by the experience, near broke and homeless, Emery made a momentous decision.
In Asia, you never read about Canada, ever. And the only article I ever saw about Canada was in 1993 about how this lower mainland of British Columbia, a place I've never heard referenced before, has more growers and more smokers of marijuana than any other place in North America. And I thought, wow, that's fascinating. I remember joking to my partner, I said, if we ever go broke, we'll have to go back to Vancouver and start a hemp revolution business, because clearly there's a lot of people in that area that would be sympathetic. Well, a year later, I do go broke. And I remember after crying my eyes out, not being able to cry anymore, and having a very light head and now thinking clearly, I decided, kids, Deb, we're going to get on a plane, we're going to go back to Vancouver, and we're going to set up a hemp store there, and we're going to try and start a revolution. I got our tickets, and we were flying back to Vancouver the next day to a place we'd never been before. And the second symbol I see that comes up all the time, she said it looks like a maple leaf, but it's not like a maple leaf. It's got even fronds on it that have ridges all the way around the edges. And she said, and there's 5 of them or 7 of them. She said the leaves were slightly different each time. But that symbol will be the banner by which you lead a multitude of people to freedom. I was a late bloomer, actually. Most people start pot in my career. I was 22. I just started dating a new woman. I was about to initiate, my first attempted sex act with Sandra, and I was going down on my knees about to eat her, and all of a sudden I think she thought I was bluffing. Most guys just do whatever worked the previous relationship and hope this works now. And I think she could see a bit of doubt in my mind. So as I looked up before that last final commitment, I saw her with her tongue licking close this joint, and she said, listen, before you do that, let's smoke this.
Marc didn't know what a joint was. I mean, he had no background in marijuana. He was not a person who used psychoactive substances. His own psychoactivity was in his own head, right?
So we smoked that joint, and I get really high for the first time in my life, and then all of a sudden when I'm eating her, it's not like just eating her, I'm gliding over the wings of manta rays, right? It's just wonderful, viscous, long, I don't know what they seem huge.
The prophecy with the $sign and the marijuana leaf, etc. He was given the cause in a sense, or that fantasy that he was given the cause came to him later. He was casting about for a place in which to put his energies. And so it seems as though it could have been almost anything. It was pornography for a while. It was a bunch of different libertarian causes.
When Emery brought his marijuana activism to Vancouver in 1994, he liked what he saw.
I looked around and I didn't see a spokesperson. I didn't find a pipe, a bong, a seed, or anything available for the ordinary person to buy. And I just thought, this is a city that needs me.
Marc came to Vancouver and he basically said, all the activists here suck. You guys are all doing it wrong. You're all a bunch of amateurs. You want to see how it's done properly, just watch me.
From here, he could build and lead a movement. And he felt certain that he'd found a way to fight and win the marijuana legalization war.
And when I arrived here on March 1st, 1994, I'd been mulling over my head in all that time in Asia, how can I make a sustaining, self-generating revolution? In other words, how can I get a revolution that pays for itself, if that is possible? Because with politics, you're always begging for money, and you're always obligated to the people who gave you this money.
I came up with this idea called overgrowing the government in 1990. And it was a brilliant, brilliant idea, if I say so myself, the best one I've ever had.
And so I'm going to sell seeds, and I'm going to generate millions of dollars, and we're going to cause marijuana to be grown everywhere in every place, so that so much marijuana is growing that the government could never possibly eradicate it all. In fact, would always be falling further and further behind. I alone will be responsible for producing more plants than they're going to destroy. So I'll literally neutralize the work of thousands and thousands of cops. And I thought, wow, that's the most amazing heroic concept I could have for someone who's brought up like me on comic books, where it's good versus evil. And the evil guys have all the guns, all the money, all the power, all the government. So how does one little guy neutralize all that evil? And I thought, yeah, we're all going to go plant, we're all going to overgrow the government. Not overthrow the government, which implies violent takeover and all sorts of conflict that's unresolvable, but overgrowing the government, using botany to fight their Nazified type plans.
Emery's first move was to break the law. In an echo of his London days, he went door to door selling High Times magazine, which was illegal in Canada. Sales went great. Despite this, authorities ignored him. And soon he had enough to open a store on Hastings Street. Hemp BC. In addition to the pipes and magazines, Hemp BC sold clothes, books, and most provocatively of all, marijuana seeds. His 16-year-old stepson was in charge of quality control.
Yes, this seed, for example, is the White Widow seed. It costs $130 for 10 seeds, and it comes from Amsterdam.
Since seeds were illegal, every sale was an attack on the government. Business was brisk, and within a few months, Emery had opened a smoking lounge where people openly smoked pot. Amazingly, the police did not intervene.
While we keep a close eye on the hemp store and the activities in the hemp store, we have numerous other priorities.
Business kept getting better and better. The seed business had become the profit center. He was making over $1 million a year. And in what he hoped was another affront to government, he paid his taxes.
Revenue Canada is not the criminal justice system. It's not up to us to judge the legality or the illegality of the business activities that generate that income.
Emery started to brag to the local media.
I'm extremely successful already. We've did $1 million in sales in our first year. We've gotten so much publicity and coverage on the local television.
Emery kept breaking the law, and the money kept pouring in. And still, the authorities ignored him. And then, in December of 1995, a year after he'd opened, something happened that made Emery impossible to ignore.
What's news to the Wall Street Journal? 2 clues. It concerns a Vancouver businessman and a growth industry.
Good morning, Earl. Hi, Norm.
This is the man who made the front page. In many ways, Marc Emery is typical Wall Street media material. Marc Emery is a key player in an industry estimated to be worth $800 million in this province.
The most influential and certainly wealthiest person in the industry.
By getting himself on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, he'd put himself on America's radar, a country actively involved in a $1 billion war on drugs. Shortly after the Wall Street Journal cover, Emery was finally arrested, and he believed his revolution had truly begun.
And that's the last time I've ever had a conversation with a police officer. And he just said, Emery, you're done for. I don't care what you do now, like you're finished.
But you weren't done for, you weren't finished.
No, I looked at him and I thought, man, you are a very short-term thinker because I am never going to give up. I am unrelenting.
This is a war, it's a dirty war, and they've got all the guns, and we've got the people, so we are going to have to try and use the resources we have to promote our point of view come hell or high water, and that's what I have to say to the Vancouver Police Department.
The day after the bust, he reopened Hemp BC. So they arrested him again. Emery was an unlikely marijuana revolutionary. 60s radicals had helped brand marijuana as anti-establishment, left-wing, and as a pathway to alternative or more expanded consciousness. The popular face of the marijuana legalization movement up to this time had been rock stars, some of whom had been arrested for smoking pot.
I'm telling you, this substance, cannabis, is a whole lot less harmful than rum punch, whiskey, nicotine, and glue, all of which are perfectly legal.
I never have taken drugs. Are you going to?
No.
Were you worried about being
Never again.
Were you worried about being...
To this, Emery brought his Superman-style capitalism. His anti-government message was closer to a right-wing Republican agenda than anything the movement had seen before.
I'm a real capitalist, and I don't believe in welfare or any kind of social system protection for people. I believe in hard work, a lot of sweat.
He talked a lot about this is going to be a capitalist revolution. You know, we're going to be a business-oriented revolution. We're going to make money on things that in and of themselves is revolutionary, and then we're going to use that money to further the revolution.
I had a young 17-year-old girl come up and grab our pamphlet and say, wow, I never thought I'd see an old man in a business suit advocating the legalization of marijuana.
As it had in London, getting arrested brought media attention. But this was different. This was the big time. An April '98 edition of Rolling Stone magazine featured an article on Vancouver's pot scene that focused primarily on Marc Emery. It was around this time that he was first dubbed the Prince of Pot by CNN.
I categorically said, do not get involved in American media, which is where the moniker Prince of Pot came. And he didn't listen to my instructions. They will demonize you, and the next thing that'll happen is they will extradite you, which is funny, because that's what happened. And I try to frighten him, and I say they'll extradite you to the state of Texas to make you do a 40-year minimum. And he says to me, and this is really, it captures what Marc's all about, he says, but people in Indonesia, which is where he just came from, will hear my name and know my saga.
Marc Emery is very much a media creation. I mean, frankly, I'm not sure why I'm taking part in this interview, because in a way I'm simply helping to build the Marc Emery media myth. He's someone who has become very adept at manipulating the media.
I never met a microphone I didn't like, really, so there's no bad medium. But
Emery used the media to provoke authorities. And with every bust, his myth grew larger.
I like to think of myself as your Prince of Pot.
Marc Emery and Dana Larson and these massive joints they're smoking, and they look wild and they act wild, and you think, wait a minute, aren't we trying to suggest that this is an activity that could be normalized? That
his theatricality seems rather egocentric at times. And sometimes it seems to become more about him than it is the issue or the issues that he's interested in.
I don't think I use the word megalomaniac lightly. I think he started to feed off the effect he had on people. He started to feed off the attention and just had to turn it up and up and up. I mean, I think in a really immature, emotional, uncontrollable for him kind of way, he fed off the response he got.
This pogrom's gotta end, and I'm gonna end it. We're gonna end it together. And one day when I'm mayor, I will apologize to all of you on behalf of the government of Vancouver for the terrible treatment you and I have received.
I always told people I was the leader of this movement. I always said I represented it. I always said that my vision was the vision we should pursue. They were on Lou Dobbs saying I'm responsible for 1.1 million pounds of marijuana worth $3 billion. $3 billion. I agree. I probably brought more money to this province than any other human being alive. But think what this province would have been without me.
So I figure I'm under good company. Above me is George Washington, and above him is God.
I have said in the past that Marc is one of the great narcissistic figures of the marijuana movement, but there are many others, probably including me. So it doesn't, you know, narcissism is here to stay, but so is marijuana.
I'm telling you now, he's a Prince of Pot.
So I'm getting a lot of positive feedback all day long from people saying, I love your work, I love what you're doing. But the real thing that's going on there is they're telling me, you, Marc Emery, are influencing me, and I'm changing my life as a reflection of your values. So that's not about narcissism, that's about politics.
The whole world knows he's the Prince of Pot.
Hey, Angel. How are you?
Women were not immune to Emery's influence.
How do you get all these girls? Life is short. Cram as many women into your life as possible. Don't give in to monogamy. All these women were attracted to me, though, because of my principles and belief systems. All the women around me are typically true believers who really do believe in what we're going to get. It's so flirty when she gets up, this little bit of flesh above her knee is such a noticeable thing, right? And men love flesh in December because there's not much of it out there, right? So we really respond to it. And this dress has a life of its own. It moves, it twirls, it's really feminine. And she feels empowered by it.
The Prince of Pot was also feeling empowered.
I didn't have a date in all of high school, so, you know, all of a sudden I'm in an environment where people want to be involved with me. They're coming up to me saying, I love your work, I love your mission, I'd love to help you in any way possible. And I would say, well, what are you doing tonight? And then we'd go out to dinner, and, you know, candidly, I never met a woman I didn't like. I mean, I even joke about that. I've never had a date I didn't like. I mean, how bad could it be? I'm there.
Particularly when the internet began, he was incredibly overt about his sexual forays and in many cases inviting women to come up from the United States to say, come up here for some great Canadian sex and weed.
He goes, hey, where's your friend there? What's her name, Lisa? I said, yeah. He says, man, tell her I'd like to see her again and I'd like to have sex with her. And I said to him, Marc, the next time I see my wife, I'll pass it on to her.
This was the beginning of the period of Emery's greatest triumphs, and his ambitions went far beyond simple earthly pleasures.
It's the Garden of Eden of life.
After the busts, Emery increasingly employed religious imagery, something at odds with his Ayn Rand-inspired rationalist roots.
The Anointed One, Jesus, it's a phrase that comes from him bathing in the holy anointed oils that the disciples prepared for him, and they contain cannabis.
It's cannabis anointing oil. I heard.
1 ounce of THC. And then he would say visions, and he would tell them parables. So it's really important to point out to people that if they're against cannabis, they're anti-Christ, they're anti-Christian.
In this new marijuana cosmology, he was Jesus, and the marijuana people were the Jews.
If we substitute the word pothead for Jew, because it's happened in history before, so let's do it again.
Jew, you can't work here. Jew, we're going to take your home. Jew, we're going to take your children and reprogram them and re-educate them, which is, of course, all what happened in the 1930s. Jew, we're going to prevent you from having a job. We're going to test you every day to make sure you're not practicing Judaism. We're going to look in your house, see if you got bombs, crosses, or the Talmud, right? There's no different at all.
Cannabis people are the most wonderful people on the planet. They've given more to this world than any other group, say possibly the Jews, as I've said. And the Jews have had a bit of problems themselves over 500 years. I'm not fronting that they haven't.
We're the chosen people, I'm quite convinced of it, because there's nothing else on earth like this. No group is being oppressed like we are.
Emery's second favorite biblical role was that of Moses.
Well, this is a holy quest for me, and I feel that it's been prophesied that I would come and do this, that I would take all this energy and all these people around the world and raise people to a height where we could get the acknowledgement that we were seeking and freed from the bondage. So it's not even a personal quest, it's like I'm an instrument, and I've been guided, and it's been foretold all along that this would be what I would do.
See, the point of civil disobedience is not kind of to fulfill your compact with God or something like that. It's it's part of ongoing activism of anticipating and hoping to stimulate mass popular protest at some level.
Emery demanded that authorities let his people go. Their response was like the Pharaohs to Moses.
I had a gun put to my head from both the police and City Hall who said, if you don't get out of town and cease business immediately, we're just going to raid you again and take all your assets and bankrupt you. And it was said as simple as that. They weren't even going to wait for any court challenges or anything.
Moses' response was a plague of hemp. Emery redoubled his efforts to overgrow the government. And in a move guaranteed to get authorities' attention, he started using the magazine not just to sell hemp clothing and pot pipes, but to sell pot seeds.
Ably assisted by Canada Post.
And I remember Mark saying, take out that hemp BC catalog, we're putting in a seed catalog in there instead. And there was some controversy among the staff as to whether that was a good idea or not, or whether that would cause problems.
We've been able to spread about $4 billion worth of pot around North America, which is at the very least kept hundreds of thousands of police officers busy day in and day out.
Someone like Mark, who combines his activism and his entrepreneurialism, makes him an easy target for the government.
It was after this, in 1997, that the U.S. government became directly involved. U.S. Naval Intelligence initiated a joint operation with Vancouver Police, codenamed Intruder. When this operation against Emery began, the United States war on drugs was in full swing.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale, and never tried it again.
Clinton had pledged during his first campaign to scale back the drug war, but that didn't happen. Over 4 million people were arrested for marijuana use during his administration, the most ever. In 1998, nearly 300,000 people were arrested on marijuana-related charges, and the war on drugs was costing America about $50 billion a year.
The line between legal and illegal drugs has nothing to do with public health. The legal drugs, even when you take rates of use into account, are much more dangerous. Alcohol and tobacco are much more dangerous for most people in most circumstances than cannabis.
The savage incarceration programs in the United States, the so-called drug war, which has been served as essentially a device to eliminate what amounts to a superfluous population, a population that has no function in the contemporary economy. So the black workforce, Hispanic workforce are basically unneeded. You got to do something with them, they're thrown in jail.
The plan for Operation Intruder was for 2 operatives from Naval Intelligence to enter Emery's Hemp BC store and buy marijuana.
It's $125 worth. It'll get you about 20 to 25 joints.
Even though Emery's store only sold seeds, not marijuana, people were still allowed to smoke pot inside the store. It was on this basis that the U.S. officers were able to get Vancouver police to shut down the store. And this time, it stayed shut.
You guys are organized fucking crime. Organized crime is what we're witnessing right here.
Unable to sell seeds from a storefront, Emery was forced to move his seed-selling business online. He also had to rely more heavily on his catalog, still included in the magazine. Undaunted by the crackdown, he made a bold move. Up till now, he'd sold seeds everywhere except the U.S. Now he started selling them directly to United States citizens. Between the online store and the catalog and the magazine, the money poured in. This allowed Emery to go on the attack again.
We get about 25 letters every day. Our total amount today is $5,332.50, more or less. And that would be pretty consistent for 5 days a week. After I started getting raided all the time, I realized, it's no point in me having this money because they're just going to come and take it. And besides that, if I give it away to a whole bunch of other people and they cause lots of shit and subversion, it'll be like 100 of me out there. Little Marc Emery clones. With this money, I will destroy this state.
Now, Emery took all that cash and used it to greatly expand his campaign against the U.S. and their war on drugs.
Giving away huge amounts of money to lobby groups, court challenges, ballot initiatives, class action suits against the U.S. and Canadian federal government, Supreme Court challenges. We've given $300,000 away to libertarian cannabis movements in the last year. It's about $12,000 a week, and we'll continue to do that. We spend our money all over the world. We spend it mostly in the United States, where the need is greatest, and very little in Canada, as it turns out.
Without a store to bust, Emery was becoming a harder target to hit. He was getting stronger and more confident. In fact, he was emboldened enough to embark on an audacious new plan. He would once again run for office.
You know, if you're willing to go to jail for the things you believe in, and then I think that's an important thing for the voters to understand.
I'm really good at retail politics. I'm really good at selling ideas, selling myself, and that's ultimately the most important thing in politics. It's never been about getting elected, and it won't be about getting elected. It's about changing the world. But getting elected is a great opportunity to educate people and to put myself before the public and give them a chance to validate my career up to that point.
In the year 2000, Emery ran in the federal election for the Quebec-based Canadian Marijuana Party.
Yes, we're serious. This is not just a protest.
They're all in denial. The Premier of British Columbia is in the same boat. He thinks because he saw a cow eat marijuana in India and went mad, that's his only assessment of the value of marijuana.
Emery ran in a federal riding in downtown Vancouver where he placed 6 out of 10 candidates, picking up approximately 2% of the vote. In 2001, Emery founded the British Columbia Marijuana Party. Different because it was a provincial party, and also different because it was far from a single-issue party.
If only Ronald Reagan knew who now owns this one-time U.S. presidential bus.
Ronald Reagan would surely disagree with Emery's opposition to the drug war. But Reagan, were he alive today, would likely endorse the rest of the party's right-wing platform, which included everything from no new taxes to private health care. Emery committed over $250,000 in his seed sale profits to this campaign, running candidates in all 79 British Columbia ridings.
We want to enhance your life by giving you more choice, more power, more control over your own existence, and less to government, less to politicians.
Emery placed 4th in his bid for a seat in the provincial legislature, receiving almost a quarter of the votes. In 2002, Emery moved on to municipal politics, making a bid for mayor of Vancouver.
I think we have to convert this city more explicitly into a marijuana-friendly community.
The Vancouver that Emery envisioned would be far less friendly for police.
By the way, as mayor candidate for Vancouver, I will make sure that I squeeze the nuts of that chief of police of Vancouver. They should never be allowed to comment on a political issue. They should shut up and do their job. Vancouver, by the way, has the worst police department.
Had police wanted to retaliate for Emery's remarks, they did again have a target. By using the laws protecting political parties, Emery was able to reopen up a storefront in the same Hastings Street location.
So are you astounded that they sort of ignore you, in a sense? I mean, you've been arrested and harassed, but...
That's true, and I've certainly been arrested many, many times, and I've certainly had all my assets taken on 4 occasions.
Vancouver police likely would have loved to have raided Emery, but they had realized that Emery was becoming virtually untouchable. His activism was paying off not just in Vancouver, but across the country. In September 2002, the Canadian Senate released a report which argued for the decriminalization of marijuana.
Good evening. The long debate over how to deal with marijuana in this country has taken a new course. Today, a Senate committee has recommended Canada legalize it.
It recommends regulating the sale of pot. Trafficking would stay illegal, shutting out criminals. Instead, licensed retailers. Anyone over 16 could buy it. As for those with criminal records for possession now, amnesty for everyone.
Shortly after the Senate's report's release, the DA's boss decided to take a trip to Canada, but not to Ottawa as you might expect. John Walters, the drug czar, a cabinet-level appointee, had decided to give a speech to the Vancouver Board of Trade.
The problem is that Vancouver, in the guise of kind of progressive opinion, is victimizing increasing numbers of young people and being a staging area for increasing victimization of people.
Emery decided to buy a table and fill it with his associates.
The drug consumer in the United States is the single biggest funder of anti-democratic forces on the right and left in this hemisphere.
Not everyone agreed with today's tough message coming from the U.S. White House.
Of the 6 million people who could benefit from treatment and need it in the United States today, 60% are dependent on marijuana.
There's 3 million of us here who smoke pot, and none of us need treatment.
In the last 2 years, for the first time, we had more teenagers seeking treatment for marijuana dependency than for alcohol, which never used to be the case because of the greater availability of alcohol. I am subject to scrutiny of the press, of the Congress, of officials at various levels. What I say, what I write, what I'm responsible for can be questioned and debated. I never heard of you.
And there were 2 tables of cops that were furious at us.
Oh, yeah.
Told us to shut up.
The drug czar doesn't like me at all.
No, he was here at the Board of Trade, and I believe you bought a table.
Oh, I bought it right in front of him. Yeah, I have a nice photograph of him just moments before I'm saying, Mr. Walter, can I get a photograph with you? And he says, well, who are you? I'm Marc Emery, publisher of Cannabis Culture magazine. I never saw a person turn so beet red so quickly and looked like they'd seen the devil incarnate.
The next day, the drug czar read the riot act to Vancouver's mayor. The investigation that Vancouver police then began at the request of the mayor would, when completed 18 months later, lead to no charges, as Canadian prosecutors refused to take the case further. A short time later, in January 2003, a lower court in Ontario effectively struck down all of Canada's marijuana laws, a court challenge that Emery helped to fund. Emery was closer than ever to making Canada an ally in his fight against the U.S. and their war on drugs.
We have a war on drugs. You guys smoke weed? The rest of you are here with your boss. Screw off. That's why we don't have a war on drugs in Canada, because our big drug is weed. And in order to have a war, you have to have people motivated to fight back. This is the DEA. Put the weed down, hippie. Dragonfly is pissed off! You heard that too, right? Yeah.
Then, in April 2003, Jean Chrétien, Prime Minister of Canada, dropped an even bigger marijuana bombshell.
We will soon introduce legislation to decriminalize possession of small amounts of marijuana. Don't start to smoke right away. We're not legalizing it. We're decriminalizing it.
To celebrate the court decision making marijuana legal, Emery decided to go on a summer of legalization tour across Canada in 2003.
You know, I've been at this for 14 years, and I am truly proud to say I can stand on Parliament Hill and say I'm holding a legal joint.
That's right.
I love this country. I love the people. I fear my government, of course. But I want to tell you, I am as proud
test the country's new ruling on marijuana by smoking pot in front of police stations across the country. Over the course of Emery's 18-city tour, he was arrested 3 times. No serious jail time resulted from any of these arrests. The tour was a huge success. Emery seemed to be the harbinger of a new age where marijuana would soon be legal, or at least decriminalized. He then made a strategic decision that spoke of his new mainstream power. He made a political deal. The New Democratic Party of Canada, a left-leaning party that championed the virtues of the welfare state and the government that comes with it, also had the most liberal marijuana policies at the time, advocating legalization. Emery agreed to put all of the marijuana party's resources behind the NDP.
It is wonderful to be back in Vancouver with our incredible team of New Democrat candidates and members of Parliament.
It is arguably the high point of Emery's mainstream acceptance when Jack Layton, the then leader of the New Democratic Party and an icon of the Canadian left, agreed to appear on Emery's internet program, Pot TV.
There are millions of Americans have often pointed to Canada as a place where things are done a bit differently. The values are differently constructed. They have to do with community. They have to do with a more social perspective, a less absolute, abstract, robust individualism, where it's dog eat dog. And I think that kind of more mellow attitude, if I may say so, seems to fit rather nicely with the modernization of marijuana laws.
The synergy in perhaps our audience getting involved with your campaign to become the Prime Minister, the leader of the New Democratic Party.
You'll support us financially because, of course, we don't have the big corporate sector financing that other parties have, and we certainly would welcome.
Money is the lubricant of liberty.
Yes.
Emery had come a long way from selling High Times magazine door to door, and an even longer way since his days as the Freedom Party's action director, a party devoted to fighting the government. And now he was the political partner of people he considered socialists.
It is precisely these trends which are bringing the world to disaster.
He had not gone through some ideological conversion and abandoned Ayn Rand. He had simply become more practical.
But at a certain point in time, you have to put the vanity of having your name on the ballot aside and deal with who's going to be in the next parliament to advocate our interests in this pivotal time.
Emery seemed about to succeed. He already had in Vancouver, and now he would win over the entire country to his side and his fight against the United States and their war on drugs. It was only a matter of time. It was, after all, foretold.
She said, I was constantly aware that there are 3 symbols that are going to guide your life. And the 3rd symbol, she says, is the most mysterious to me, is your mind. I see your mind like a steel trap. In fact, your brain has got a little cage around it. And she says, and I'm pretty sure that means you can keep everything in that brain of yours. But when you see pictures of my bedroom, there's just me and a pen and nothing else around 4 walls. There's no toys, there's no games, there's no mobiles, nothing on the walls, just 4 walls. And I'm standing there looking bored. At age 9 months, right? And when I was even younger, I used to bang my head against the crib back and forth. She said, and this is what's funny, she said the crib would move back and forth all day long. But my mom didn't feel kind of like motivated to wonder. She said, I took you to the doctor and he said, you're either mad or a genius. Right, that's all he said. So my mother later apologized. She said, listen, I didn't want children. I was really depressed after I had you, and I felt really guilty because you turned out to be such a nice boy, right? And she said, you were never a problem. She said, so eventually I, grew to love you and stuff. But in your early years, she said, I ignored you and didn't do anything with you. And she said, I didn't really want to be part of that. And so she said, so I felt bad about that all these years. I felt like, I go, oh, well, you see, the thing is, I interpreted it totally differently. It just goes to show you. I remember being in that pen thinking, as soon as I get out of this pen, man, I'm going to be busy.
For Freud, right, an absent or cruel, harsh, punishing mother can lead to a failure to resolve the Oedipus complex. A person can get sort of stuck in that adolescent or infantile mode of needing that kind of attention constantly.
The earliest recollection I have, and I have really outstanding memory of all sorts of things back to when I was a child, was sitting on the potty, and I remember it looks like there's a little chip out of it. It's an old porcelain reversed cap that we used to play with as a kid too, but I'm sitting on it, and I don't understand English at the time, and my mum is towering above me, and I can tell at a very early age she's frustrated that I haven't gone potty, that nothing's coming out, and I feel like telling her nothing's gonna come out, it's just not there. But my mother was very insistent. She said, listen, we have to go somewhere. I remember her wanting me to hurry up for some reason, to be bundled up in my diaper and taken away. We had to go somewhere. Very Freudian in a classic sense too. I mean, you don't really come across classic Freudian things. But going potty is pretty much your earliest experience with authority when you're a person, because I'm sitting there and your body organs go when they go. They do not go on command. See, they're involuntary for that very reason. It's involuntary because you can't tell them to go. And I didn't have to go potty, and my mom's there, and it's on her schedule, and I can tell she wants me to go potty for her reasons, because she's got to do something, even though I have no idea what the heck's going on. I'm just looking up, and I sense her frustration, and I feel it. And that's my earliest recollection. It's probably around 9 months to a year or something like that.
In the fall of 2003, Emery seemed very close to his goal of overgrowing the government, at least in Canada, where marijuana was still legal, thanks to a January 2003 Ontario court ruling that threw out Canada's marijuana laws. But then it all went south. First, a fire on the pot block shut his store down and almost burnt him out.
Hi there, I'm back, because I'm pissed, actually.
Then, even worse, Emery was stunned when pot, after briefly being legal in Canada, was suddenly made illegal again. The decision to make pot illegal was made by an Ontario Court of Appeal on October 7th, 2003.
I've looked at this decision. This is what the Ontario Court of Appeal decision is bad, terrible, all over. The government tonight is drinking champagne and celebrating. They probably called strippers, and they're having a great old time.
The Americans were thrilled with the decision, but less thrilled when, a few months later, the Canadian government announced its plan to, if not legalize marijuana, at least decriminalize it.
More use in Canada, he says, will mean more smuggling to the U.S., and that, he says,
is a form of harm that amounts to a kind of chemical warfare.
The U.S. was putting a lot of pressure on Canada not to decriminalize marijuana.
In Ottawa, the opposition asked why an American politician saw the bill before it was tabled in Canada.
I've been around long enough to have respect for Parliament and know that laws should be put down here first and not elsewhere. The Prime Minister, even though he's been here longer than me, never has to worry about being charged with possession of respect for Parliament, even in small amounts.
The heady days of the summer of legalization seemed to be long since past. On July 22nd, 2005, Emery was raided again. But this was a raid like no other.
They want to extradite. Hey, they want to extradite fucking Mark to no way. Michelle and Greg. They want to extradite them. That's what this is about. This is the fucking American search warrant. That's fucked up.
What have you been charged? Have you been charged?
Yes, I have been
With,
charged.
what are you being charged with?
This conspiracy to do something. To be euphoric. Marijuana, these guys are working for the United States. You want that money?
But Emery wasn't at his store that day. He was in faraway Atlantic Canada, in tiny little Lawrencetown, where he was speaking at a marijuana event.
As I go towards my car, a man gets out in a Kevlar jacket and a big guy, and I say, how you doing? Still not sort of putting the two together. And then immediately I'm surrounded by 8 cops. Another car comes up behind me here, another one comes up behind me here. There's 4 of them, and they put me up against the car, and they immediately put handcuffs on me, and then they read me my rights. Marc
Scott Emery, also known as the Prince of Pot. They actually say that. It's actually on the arrest warrant. You are arrested, and then the fateful words, I was used to hearing you were arrested, but you are arrested for extradition to the United States of America. And then I remember that's like the part in the TV where all of a sudden the soundtrack comes in and you have that sort of personal space that, oh my God, it's all happening right now in this second, like this is, and it gets to be a very magical moment when you hear those fateful words.
This magic moment, so different and so new, was like any other.
Because in my case, I immediately slumped and relaxed. When they had me handcuffed, it's not like I even heard them say anything, but I immediately felt kind of relaxed and completely at home with the whole idea of what was going to come.
These charges are a result of an extensive DEA investigation in which Mr. Emery and his co-defendants, it is alleged, sold marijuana seeds. He is a drug dealer.
Vancouver police say so far Emery isn't facing any charges in this country and tried to explain why it took a request from U.S. authorities to finally lay charges.
We're talking about quantity, we're talking about frequency and information that they had. Perhaps this was enough to jump onto our radar screen to say that, hey, let's start looking at this more seriously.
It's because of that aggressive law enforcement and intelligence efforts that Marc Emery's overwhelming arrogance and abuse of the rule of law will no longer be on display or tolerated.
Released on $50,000 bail, Emery used his first press conference to launch his campaign against extradition in what would be his greatest and perhaps final showdown with government.
I felt that one day my destiny would be to confront the Goliath that is the United States Bush administration. So now the shoe has dropped. Now the Goliath, now the evil empire has finally made its move on me, and now I can confront the enemy face to face. I am never going to retire. I am never going to stop. It is till liberty or till death.
If extradited, Emery was facing up to life imprisonment in the U.S. for something he'd receive a fine for in Canada.
If you, the Canadian people, allow me to be extradited, you will never see me alive again.
Prison is torture. It's mind torture, body torture, physical torture. It's plain torture.
Landa, who now runs a prisoner outreach program, served 4 years in a U.S. penitentiary for growing medical marijuana.
Myself, maybe Marc, maybe a handful of other people would say, okay, we'll go to jail for 5 years if the war is over. We'll be satisfied.
But Emery couldn't be certain that his going to jail would do anything for the legalization movement. Emery, who had spent his life agitating to get into jail, now found himself in a desperate struggle to keep himself out of a U.S. prison.
Winston Churchill once said, the Americans will do the right thing after they've tried all the alternatives.
Emery did his best to stir up anti-American sentiment in Canada. He believed this to be the key in his fight to avoid extradition.
We stayed out of the immoral wars like the Vietnam War and the Iraq War and set a good example for our American cousins whose first impulse is to guns, domination, and violence. This nation, Canada, cannot stand if we allow the evil perfidy of the U.S. government, the Bush administration, and the DEA to infiltrate this country and destroy us, and destroy us it will.
Americans are the most incarcerating society on earth. They have 2.4 million people in there. Canada, by comparison, is a very civilized country. We only have 36,000 people in all the jails in this entire country.
Emery's fight with the U.S. government seemed to be winning over converts, at least north of the border. 48% of Canadians, the majority of those with an opinion, opposed Emery's extradition to the United States.
I don't agree with what he's done, but if he hasn't broken the law in this country, I think it's kind of scary if we start extraditing people that aren't guilty of a crime here.
I think they should stay in their own country. This is Canada, that's the United States. Keep your own laws down there.
What really got me was the whole sovereignty aspect of the story. Because living next to the world's most persuasive imperial power, you know, it has to affect Canada in some ways. And Drug policy and marijuana policy specifically is really kind of a litmus test of the sanity of any public figure or public policy, I think.
I recognize the sovereignty we have in Canada, and I respect that sovereignty, and others have to respect that sovereignty. We're here to deal with our issues. The U.S. can deal with their issues. Like I mentioned earlier, they're the ones that are causing the problems. That's where the demand is.
The Conservative minister responsible, Rob Nicholson, had the right to refuse the United States in their request to extradite Emery if he believed the reasons were primarily political. Emery did have one very good piece of evidence suggesting that his prosecution was politically motivated.
Karen Tandy of the Drug Enforcement Administration, she's the director. When I was arrested, she sent out a 4-paragraph gloating press release that boasted and used the term marijuana legalization movement 4 times in 4 paragraphs as to how the movement was now blunted because it didn't have my money anymore. Statements like that mean it's more than just he's in another cartel we're taking down.
Even though he's being arrested for selling seeds, nowhere in the press release says that he's a seed seller. The very thing for which he's arrested isn't even mentioned in the press release. Instead, all of his political efforts are being mentioned.
And so it's very much political, and there are hundreds of seed sellers selling seeds out of Canada to Americans for years and years, and there's no thought of anybody else being extradited but me, simply because I'm really good at what I do.
The whole thing has been political from day one, and I think everybody understands that, and that's another reason that he has a lot of support.
Marc is in jail because he's a political activist, and the DEA, that's why they went after him entirely. It's the only reason he's the #1 figure for them in Canada, is because of what he says, not because of what he was doing.
Emery's lawyers were less convinced that they had either the overwhelming public support or the evidence that would be necessary to stop his extradition to the U.S.
That is clearly a good piece of cogent evidence, but just a piece. The question is, will there be sufficient evidence to convince a court of law that this is a politically inspired extradition request?
Over the course of the campaign, Jody Gies Ramsey had emerged as a key ally in Emery's fight against extradition to the U.S.
He was potentially facing dying in an American prison and never coming back to Canada again. But I think that time brought him and Jody a lot closer together. And that intimacy and that emotional neediness that Marc started facing, that he never really needed anybody before, because he's always been, Marc, I can do it all by myself. I am an island. I am the superhero. I don't need anybody, right? And I got tons of women who love me. What do I need to, do that for? But Jody was there for him.
You have a little hair in your nose.
Okay, give it a pull.
Aww.
That wasn't nearly as much anguish as I was anticipating.
On July 23, 2006, Emery and Gies Ramsey were married. Emery had become engaged to Gies Ramsey while he was still engaged to his former fiancée, Cheryl Riddick, seen here with Gies Ramsey outside a British Columbia courthouse.
He's been very, very devastated by the whole ordeal.
I heard that Marc just went to her and said, I want you to be my mistress, and then she was his mistress, and then she wasn't his mistress. He said, I want to marry you, even though he was marrying Cheryl, and then that's what I heard.
Emery had had numerous long-term common-law relationships and one marriage before he met Gies Ramsey.
They used to call me a serial monogamist, and it's not necessarily because I was monogamous, but it's because I always had a partner ready. When one left, another would be there.
Emery first met Gies Ramsey when she was 16. He was 43 at the time. They would meet in person on her 18th birthday.
Well, Jody, I first met her December 4th, 2001, when she joined the Cannabis Culture Forums, and she'd only recently become aware of cannabis culture. Up till that year, 2001, she was very militantly against it. One day, in the latter part of 2001, she smoked marijuana and found it a good, positive experience, and then began corresponding with me on the Cannabis Culture Forums.
I started posting things on there, and he said, wow, you seem really intelligent and beautiful. And
I immediately said, you're very vivacious. looking woman. It's not a sexual relationship in any way. We don't discuss that. We discuss matters of intellect, politics.
Then I decided I wanted to move to Vancouver, do something new. It's the big city, and maybe I'd meet a businessman who would sweep me off my feet, or, you know, like big city dreams. He did, of course, financially help me, like, be able to stay downtown. He wanted me to be able to be there not with him, we weren't living together, but he wanted to make sure I was comfortable and that I would be able to stick around. A couple days after being arrested by the DEA and calling me up and saying, as soon as I get out, I'm moving in with you and we're getting married. And I said, okay. A couple days go by, and then he and her find another apartment they have to move into, and she starts finding a job in town, and I just kind of said, well, what's happening here? And then she asked if he was in love with me, and he couldn't lie anymore. He said he couldn't say no to that.
Jody is the first woman I've been involved with that's comfortable in front of cameras, comfortable with politics, wants to be an equal partner in that struggle with me. And that has never happened with me before. So this is a new experience for me. We've been together now 6 years, and she is very much a full partner in my career, and that's been very helpful in reining in my more egocentrical aspects.
To take thee, Marc Emery.
To take thee, Marc Emery.
To be my lawful wedded husband.
To be my lawful wedded husband.
Emery's wedding made the front pages of newspapers across Canada and was picked up by media around the world. Before, after, and during the wedding, Emery continued to press his case against extradition. But Emery was beginning to worry and beginning to consider making a deal.
First of all, it worries me that Greg and Michelle would go to jail, 'cause that's bad. Michelle's got Crohn's disease, and she's a true believer.
Greg Williams and Michelle Rainey were Emery's co-accused. Both were employees of Emery's and fellow activists.
And Greg is a 50-year-old man who's been totally devoted to our cause, is a great activist, a wonderful person, and it would really pain me if both those people went to jail. That I would feel guilty about.
And there were others to consider, besides Greg and Michelle.
Selfish for you to want to go languish in jail and pout and hope that people get angry enough to change the government's decision, which they won't. It's impossible. Ian told me as much. You're not sure? You don't even know the strategy, Mark. You're being ridiculous.
It's nice to know you love me.
No, you're being ridiculous.
His highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness.
So Emery sat down with his old adversary to try to make a deal.
The American government is proposing a 10-year sentence to be served both in Canada and the United States that guarantees a minimum of 5 years in custody. It's a pretty severe deal.
Severe, perhaps, but still a victory, as it would allow Emery to serve the bulk of his sentence in Canada and make early release more likely.
And in exchange for taking that plea, they would drop any request for jail time for my two co-accused, and I could stay here in Canada in jail for most of that. At least my wife would get to visit me.
So Emery made a deal. All that was left was for the Canadian government to rubber stamp it. But Canada had changed since the heady days of the summer of legalization in 2003. The pot-friendly Prime Minister, Jean Chrétien, who famously said that after he retired, he would have a joint in one hand and the money to pay the fine in the other, had left politics. Now, Stephen Harper and his Conservative Party were in power.
What we are up against is a culture that since the 1960s has, at the minimum, not encouraged drug use and often romanticized it. I don't, as a father, I don't say all these things blamelessly. You know, my son is listening to my Beatles records and asking me what all these lyrics mean. And, you know, it's just there. It's out there. I love these records. I'm not putting them away. But that said, the reality is that there has been a culture that has not fought drug use, and that's what we're all up against.
And he's prepared, it would seem, to do battle
against this mythical drug culture.
Emery's plea deal with the U.S. was rejected by the Harper government. It was the first time a U.S. deal like this was ever turned down by the Canadians.
What we required was the Canadian government to get involved and kind of rubber stamp that and agree to imprison me here in Canada, and the Canadian Prosecutorial Service has declined to be involved.
Emery was shocked by the Canadian government's decision to turn down his request to serve his sentence in Canada. On September 28, 2009, Emery handed himself in to Canadian authorities for extradition to the United States.
This man is a hero! A hero!
Emery is expected to spend about a month in custody in BC before Canada signs the extradition agreement, which will see him taken to Seattle for sentencing.
But Emery still had one last chance. If his final press conference and subsequent publicity campaign drummed up enough popular feeling, it was still possible that the minister wouldn't sign the extradition warrant. With Marc Emery stuck in a Canadian holding cell, Jody Emery, now in charge of Marc's 20-odd employees in various enterprises, organized an ambitious campaign of civil disobedience. Free Marc Emery protests were held in Canada and around the world. Emery's allies occupied the offices of Conservative members of Parliament and staged smoke-ins across the country, hoping that the Conservatives would be so embarrassed that they wouldn't sign the extradition warrant. And then, unexpectedly, the minister didn't sign the order. It sat on his desk so long that Emery was released on bail by Canadian authorities on November 18, 2009, pending extradition. The now free Emery stepped up the fight when the Vancouver 2010 Olympics happened a few months later. Emery was able to harvest a lot of media attention for himself and his cause during the Games. Emery was also able to get 12,000 signatures on a petition, which was presented in Parliament by members of all three parties, including the Conservatives who had turned down Emery's bid to serve his sentence in Canada. The campaign was clearly putting political heat on the government.
I'm presenting a petition today, quite a large petition as you can see from the pile on the table beside me, regarding Marc Emery, the leader of the British Columbia Marijuana Party.
And the petitioners call on Parliament to make it clear to the Minister of Justice that such an extradition should be opposed. So I'm very pleased to present this. I think it's a very strong reflection of Canadians' view on this matter.
It was a very satisfying moment, and the CBC also revealed that the Justice Minister claims that it's not on his desk and that he hasn't had an opportunity to sign it yet, so he's still considering it, which is news to me because my lawyer said it's been on his desk for 9 weeks now, and I can be extradited on 4 hours' notice on any day, so I'm hoping somehow the minister has misplaced this.
But the minister hadn't misplaced it, nor had the government changed its mind. Emery had come to the end.
Well, Martin Luther King is only an inspiration, but I like to think that we're running parallel lives.
When he compares himself to Martin Luther King or Gandhi, I think his narcissism goes too far. His mindset has a lot in common with theirs. He wants to do what he thinks is right, and he has done that. But I think there are very few people, in my judgment, I can't think of anybody who can successfully compare themselves to those two men. And I think that to me is an expression of exactly the kind of excess that disturbs me a little bit about Marc. But, you know, in a sense, for him, it came with the territory, and I will not be put off by that. I'm keeping my eyes on what he has accomplished.
When he first came to Vancouver in 1993, I think it was, I started getting these phone calls, who is this asshole? And I was like, geez, yeah, and I called him up and we had this argument. And then I began to realize, just as the hands and the feet serve a purpose on the body of man, so does the asshole. And perhaps the body of people that make up the pop movement need an asshole for the movement to move through for a while.
There are 2.4 million Americans currently in jails and prisons in the United States. The idea that any of them would ask me, do you know Joseph Smith? Do you know Betty Jane? But they ask me about Marc Emery everywhere I go.
Marc Emery and I share a lot of the same beliefs back when I was 12. The difference between Marc Emery and I is I grew up. He has not.
On March 15th, 2010, Emery was driven to the U.S. border. There, he was handed over to U.S. authorities. Emery pled guilty in a Seattle courtroom and was sentenced to 5 years in a U.S. penitentiary for distributing drugs. From this, there would be no reprieve.
Our communities are better off with him not on the streets peddling dope, which ends up in our country here in America. And so I'm glad that his marijuana seeds are no longer making their way into our market.
There are, in this country, tens of thousands of prisoners released every day. Every single day at about 9 o'clock in the morning or so, a door opens up, and more often men walk out that door with nobody waiting for them. Nobody, barely even their family members. And yet, if I have the opportunity, I would be there to welcome Marc.
In my case, if I were murdered in prison or came to an untimely end, it would enhance my reputation through the next several generations and throughout history. And that's more important to me than what you can accomplish in the present tense.
You're going to say, what's Marc's legacy? That was going to be your question. And I didn't want you to ask me that because I would say nothing. But if you ask me what's my legacy, I'd say nothing. So it's not because of anything Marc did or didn't do, it's we didn't achieve the result.
It's a calling. 30 years ago I decided that, I was being chosen in a kind of like a mythological way to do this for people. It's always been my destiny to do this, and it's been my destiny probably to go to jail for this.
This magic moment, so different and so new, was like any other until I kissed you, and then it happened. It took me by surprise. I knew that you felt it too, by the look in your eyes, sweeter than wine, softer than the summer night. Everything I want, I have, whenever I hold you tight. This magic moment, while your lips are close to mine, will last forever, forever till the end of time. Sweeter than wine, softer than the summer night. Everything I want, I have, whenever I hold you tight. This magic moment, while your lips are close to mine.